me start recording. Okay, cool. So this plane that we had behind it, did anyone have problems while they were selecting stuff, accidentally selecting the plane?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. I legit forgot to tell you. So if you want to have that plane there as reference, but not accidentally selecting it. So I'm like trying to select all of these here, and I do that. I'm like, oh, accidentally selected the plane. What we need to do is a thing called a freeze on the plane. But you'll see a problem. So there's a frozen tab on the side of the... Is the light too bad? Will I turn off the lights or is it okay? Turn off. Alright, so you see the way it says frozen there? If I just click that little freeze thing, that's frozen. Which means I can't select, I can't select it, so I can select everything else. The only way I can select it is by clicking on it in the scene view. Now, obviously, there's a big problem. I can't see it anymore because it's gone gray. And the reason why it's gone gray is because by default, it shows you everything that's frozen in gray, so you know, oh, that's frozen, that's why I can't select it. Now, in this case, and just in this specific case, we want it to be frozen, but also not gray. Okay, so we need to right-click on it, like in here, select it, right-click on it, and you go to Properties, and Show Frozen in Gray right here. Just untick that. Boop. Okay, so now it is frozen, so I can't select it, but I can still see the texture. Does that work for everyone? You never had what? This thing, the Scene Explorer. If you had never had it, sometimes it doesn't show. It is... Where the heck is it? Is it Customize, Show UI? Which one is it? Is it in Tools, is it? Oh yeah, Tools, Scene Explorer, right here. Got it? Cool. You can just freeze it by clicking the little freeze button. And you make it not gray by right-clicking on it. And Properties, and turn off Show Frozen. Cool. You alright? Looks like a resolution issue.
Oh no, guess what?
Are you in 2019, by the way? Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this plane for now, just so you can see what I'm doing a bit better. So everyone's got one of these, more or less. And some people want to cut holes with them. Not everyone does, but anyone who wants to cut a hole, it is a thing called a boolean. And let me just show you what that is. I'm just gonna make a cylinder. And a boolean is like you cut something from something else. You minus something from something else. So make a cylinder. Because I don't care about height segments, I'm not going to make that cylinder change shape. I'll just remove all the height segments. And I'm going to make the sides less. So not that few, like maybe like that, maybe that. 7, make it 8 sides. And then put it sideways. So that's 90 degrees. Come on, there we go. And essentially, literally just like shove it where you want to cut a hole. This is method number 1. There's a few methods. I don't really like this method because it's a bit janky sometimes. I actually don't know where the hole goes. Is it there? Yeah, it's more or less. And I'll make it a little smaller because it's quite small. Okay, so I can do it this way. If I select the main one and I'll go from standard primitives to something called compound objects in the create menu, and I'll go to Boolean. Sorry? Are you on your good laptop, yeah? Okay, let me just check in a sec. I'll just finish this. And then like I can do a union, we'll put the two of them together, and I can do a subtract. So subtract will delete. And add operand, add the second one, and it subtracts that. Okay, so literally just cuts the hole through. So that's option number 1. Now the problem here is what? What? Yeah, I need to quad all this stuff up. That's not quadded up. So that's method number 1. Method number 2 is a little bit neater, but probably doesn't look as pretty. We'll see. And we need to delete that boolean. Go away, boolean. Oh no. Okay, method number 2. Let's see if this works. If I just connect these two, and I'm gonna make like a cut to create a because I can't connect across a line. If I'm trying to connect these two, I can't connect across them, so I have to use the cut. So I have to be really careful. If it's this kind of weird flat line, it means it's hitting on the line. I need to make it go to the little target, so it's on the square, and do that, and right click to stop doing it. Cool. And then I grab this, and I should be able to chamfer. And you can kind of make a hole like that. It's not the greatest. It doesn't look as nice. But it just means you don't have to quad stuff up because it's already all quadded. Cool. The boolean is probably the best way, probably.
What's the boolean and
ProBoolean screws up more. Don't really know the difference, to be honest. I've used ProBoolean before, but they made fixes to Boolean, I'm pretty sure. Like Boolean looks nicer now. I don't really know, to be honest. Let's find out. 3ds Max. Difference between ProBoolean and Boolean. No one knows. And yours, 3ds Max. Robin, if you upscale that, like make it really huge, does it still have the same problem? And it was fine. Must have been a setting or something then. ProBoolean just has more options, which is fine. Okay, so get rid of this shit. Cool. So remember I was saying about this, a lot of people were doing loads of spheres. So like you made loads of little spheres and copies and blah, 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 which is great, except that now when we go to unwrap, which we're going to add textures and stuff, you're going to have to unwrap every single sphere that you made because you all made a bunch of different spheres. That's kind of dumb. Like unwrapping one sphere it's easy, but unwrapping 10 spheres, it's just 10 times the work for no reason. So there's a couple things we can do. One is the old school method, and the old school method is you literally just make one of each thing that you need. This is the old school method that I've done. That one was made from a cylinder. This was a cylinder. Oh, okay. Here. Okay. I'll do it again. Because with a cylinder I can control exactly, so I can control exactly how many polys I have. And I can control exactly where the curve comes from. Because with the torus, let's make a torus. It's fine, like torus is fine. Segments, and then sides. So I don't really control where the sides end up. Like I can do that, but say I wanted what I did. Well, this is pretty much exactly the same thing. Yeah, it's pretty much it. Sometimes, let's say depending on how many segments, I may not be able to control where it is. That's all. To be honest, same diff, pretty much. But just in case, just so you know how to do a cylinder, it's pretty easy. Do that, convert to editable poly, or add edit poly, same thing. I'm going to grab the two tops, so the bottom and the top, and then I'm going to do an inset. What? Okay, I'm not sure what's going on there. We'll take a pause, we'll see. I'll grab both borders, because they're both borders, and I can do a thing called bridge. And as long as the poly count is the same on either side, it bridges them together, right? They have to be the same count though. And then all I did was select all the things in here and I did connect. So they're both connected. And then I selected the outside ring, so loop, and scaled that out, and the inside ring and scaled that in. And to be honest, kind of gave me, this is the reason why you might, because I might want the inside to be only a little bit scaled and the outside to be more. So I have a little bit of control. But to be honest, I can just make a torus and then select it and scale it out anyway. So it's kind of much of a muchness, to be honest. Like if I wanted something weird like this, I'd have to grab the torus and, you know. But it's the same thing, really. Mine actually takes more steps. So torus is probably better. There is font. I put that in to remember. Show how to make this. To do font, it's literally, it's in the lines, and there's a font thing. Spines. Where's font? Font's here. Text, there we go, sorry. And like, boop. And there it is. And you can delete it. You can change the text at any time, and you can change the font. It should use any font in your system, I think. Yeah. So like if I do, like, you know, should change it to any font. And then you can obviously extrude that. So you get polygons. The only problem with fonts is this. Some fonts don't work that well. You get like blank spaces in between and stuff. And some fonts are really high res, so you get loads of polys. But anyway, let's go back to that. So what I was saying about the making only one thing. Where am I? I'm so far away. So you can either do the old school way of just making one of them, you unwrap, and then later after you finish unwrapping, you collapse everything to editable poly, and then you copy each bit to different elements, and they'll be unwrapped already. Because once you've unwrapped it, it will remember it's unwrapped when you copy it. So that's option number one. Option number two is a little more complicated, and you need to keep this, you need to remember this, but you can do a thing called a instance. Now, if I right click, do this, sorry, a reference. I can do a reference, okay. So this sphere is referencing this main sphere now. And if I scale this, it's fine. And if I rotate it, it's fine. I can do like loads of stuff to it, that's okay. But if I go into the original sphere, edit poly, let me just do an edit poly to it, and do whatevs to it, it will kind of like, it will reference the original sphere. But obviously it's going the other way because I rotated it. That makes sense? It is still a separate object. So this is sphere 003. I think the other one's 4. Yeah, 4. Cool. So it just references the other. Now the only reason why I show you the old school way is because it's a little easier. The way I'm doing it with only one of each object, it means I can attach them all to one giant editable poly and just unwrap all of the pieces at once. And afterwards I'll copy them. This way you need to keep them separate, unwrap them all separately, and then attach them at the end. Okay, and I know that's a bit weird because you don't really, I'm not sure if you get what I mean because you haven't done unwrapping yet. But when you're unwrapping, like you remember when we unwrapped the box and you could see all the polygons on the box because it was all one object. This way you have to keep them separate objects because they're referencing each other while you're unwrapping. Okay, so the old school way is a little bit easier in some ways, like just having one of each thing. But just for your reference, like if you're ever making something in the future, like if you're making like a hallway with loads of pillars and you don't really want to unwrap each pillar just yet, you make the first one, all the rest are like either instances or references, and then whatever you do to the first pillar will affect all the rest. So you can just put it all together, put them in position, block it out, and go like, okay, now I'm going to make the first one fancy, and they'll do it to all the rest of them. Cool?
Is there a way to change it from like an instance or a reference?
I actually don't know. Well, back to...
not back, like change to its own thingy.
Oh yeah, to its own thingy, definitely. Yeah, you just slap an edit poly over it. Putting an edit poly over anything pretty much just stops it. Yeah, you can list like, okay, so I do that, and I call that a reference. So that's a reference. It should do what I tell it to do. But I just go right click, convert to editable poly. It should be its own thing now. And if I do this, it shouldn't. Yeah, it's its own thing. So having the edit poly kind of usually ignores the fact that it's a reference. You're kind of making its own separate object. Cool. So I'm gonna do the old school way. I don't really care what you all do. You can do it the instance way. It is a little more complicated. You just need to keep in track where stuff is. The reason why I'm doing the old school way is before I go to unwrap, I'm gonna attach all of these things. So they're all gonna be one giant object, and that just means when I unwrap that one object by itself, and I can see all the polygons on my UV editor, which is a lot handier. Cool. Am I confusing anyone, or is there any questions? Uchi? So if I'm going to attach them all together, I'm just going to grab that first sphere here. Oh, I forgot to make a teardrop. Bad buzz. Just make, no, not a reference. Copy. And I'm just going to make a teardrop real quick. So in case anyone forgot, soft selection. I'm just going to select the top one, drop the fall off down. Come on, and make the pinch a bit. Cool, more or less. Cool. All right, so that's a teardrop by itself. So I'm gonna say this one because that's like right in the center. It's on my grid. To turn off the grid, hit G, on and off. It's directly on my grid, so my pivot point's already correct. And what I can do is, if I convert that to an editable poly, or just add an edit poly here, they both do the same thing. I can attach everything else. So you can go attach, and you can click each one individually, or you can just hit the little square beside it and just select freaking everything. Oh, whoops. Cool, and they're all one object. And now if I spawn this in game, the pivot point is down there, so it'll spawn on the little wall, and it'll be upright. That makes sense? Now, depending on what I'm doing with this stuff, I may not want the pivot point to be there. If it's going to be held by a character, I may want the pivot point to be in the center, so it spawns like, you know, if I spawn it in the hand of someone, and I want the pivot point to be where the hand would be holding it, I'll probably put the pivot point to where the hand's holding it. Does that kind of make sense? Right now, it's going to spawn from the bottom. So whenever I instantiate it or drag it in or whatever, that's where it spawns from. That's where it rotates from as well. Cool. And as always, you can go change that in the third tab, affect pivot, and you will only affect the pivot. So if I wanted the hand to hold it here, maybe I'll put it there, and that's where it's going to spawn from. So if I spawn at the hand, it'll spawn at that position. Cool. All right, so I'm going to take a small little quick break here.